Good morning. So we're on to n equals 8, and one of the requests that's come in, so it's going to be hopefully quite a quick one to deal with, is about the geolocation plugin. So what I'm going to try and do is 3 or 4 platforms as quickly as I can which use location. So let's dive into it. Not going to talk through basic creation because you know all about it. Instead, I'm just going to dive through, and if there are steps here that you don't know about, then by all means go back to previous guys and try to follow them up. Gosh, N08 already. This is location, and we'll call it location.core, and hopefully this will all just be absolutely familiar to you. You won't need me to explain any of it anyway. So we're just adding in the main Mvvmcross package, and then because we know we're going to use location, let's just add it in now. We can see there's a location plugin. Let's add it. Okay, so we could just use location if we wanted to directly in our first view model. So what we could just do is we could do a constructor, and in that constructor we could just take the geolocation watcher. So let's do that. Watcher, and we probably want to store that as a private member, so let's do it private read only. Done. And then what we probably would like to do is watcher equals watcher, and then let's start it. Now this is going to be a very demo-y example because normally I wouldn't put the watcher directly in a view model. But it should be fine for now. Normally you'd have to check whether it's already started because you only want one of these watchers really in your application. So for options, we'll just pass in the default options, whatever they are, and then it asks you for 2 callbacks essentially for when things happen. And so we'll have on location as one of them, and the other is on error. So let's create methods for those 2 guys. Location, and then we're going to handle it. So what we probably would like to do is to just expose these properties. So let's expose 2 properties, and we want let's just do a basic long and lat. So that's going to be a double, which is underscore long, and then we want a second property which is going to be a lat, so let's just do that, pmvx double, and this is lat. So those are our 2 properties. You could actually just put a structure in here or something instead. We'll get rid of that hello property because nobody really wants it, and we could, if you really want, put an error in as well, so we'll do that. No, let's not worry about the error. We're just going to ignore the error messages for now. We will just in there trace that we get one, so we do mvx.error. Oops, that's not working for me. mvx.error, and we'll just trace it. So obj.code. You could put a more meaningful error in here, like scene location error brackets 0. So hopefully you can see all we're doing is tracing that, so there's no feedback to the user that there's a problem. And you will get problems with location. You'll get, for example, that you are inside a building and you can't get location and not on Wi-Fi or whatever, or in plane mode. So you do need to handle those, but for this simple demo we don't need to worry about it. And then all we actually want to do is in this on location we want to set that long. Oops. So for those what we do is we type lat equals, and this is going to be obj.coordinates.latitude, and long equals obj.coordinates.longitude, and we're relying on the fact here that Mvvmcross will make sure that when you set these properties they get marshaled onto the UI thread. And I'm just going to rename that parameter because I don't like it, and I'll rename this parameter error because I don't like it. And that's it. So that's our core project sorted out. Should be able to build it. It builds. Let's add a UI, and we will start with, first in the alphabet is Android, and so we're going to add a, what's this project called, location.droid, and we add it. It goes off, runs wizard. Again, I'm not talking through this in detail, you've seen it in plenty of N+1s before. I'm going to ignore the message about the betas, I can't install those anyway at the moment. And I will do Mvvmcross again, and we want to add in the core, and we need to add in the location. And then what we need to do in here is we'll get rid of the old activity because that's not needed. But what we need to do is in first view, in the resources for it, we need to add, and I'll get rid of the old main.xml as well, that's not needed. In first view, we just need to update it a little. So I'll use the text part of the designer, which is loading. And we're going to get rid of this edit text because that doesn't make any sense. And we're just going to put like 3 text views in a row on the screen. So what we'll have is we'll have text for lat, we'll have text for long, and at the top we will just have some static text. So we'll just say Android : text equals long R. So that will give us our 3 that will give us 3 lines of text. Hopefully we can see that in designer. You know, you'll have that, then you'll have the lat, then you'll have the long, and then there's one more step we have to do, which is to do with the fact that because we're accessing location, we're going to need to add an Android manifest, which is like a permissions file if you like, or an overall config file. And what I'm going to do is in this permissions list you will hopefully find location. Now I believe there's an access, here they are. So there's an access course location, which you need to tick, and there's an access find location. And if you save that, then what actually happens in here, you can see, is you get Android manifest, and in the Android manifest, hopefully you can see, it's just added a couple of users permissions. So that's done, and what we should be able to do now is debug start, and that should package things up and hopefully find my my emulator that's running here. Oh, it's saying there's an error. So what have I done wrong? So I haven't added the reference to the core project, that's what it's complaining about. So let me do that, location.core. And now hopefully what should happen is it should run up. So let's do it. So it's doing that, and hopefully somewhere we should start to see some location coming in. Is it going to work on here? Maybe it's an emulator thing and I don't have any location. Let me see what's coming in terms of trace. There's no real information. Right, how do I set? So this is probably going to be a problem with the emulator. And what I need to do is I need to just set the location with the emulator, which is going to be hard to do. So what I'm going to do is instead, because that wasn't the best demo, is I'm going to wire up a real phone, and in this case it's a Nexus 10 in the background, and I'm going to hook it up. And what you will hopefully see is, okay, so I've hooked my Nexus 10 up and it's noticed it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get, hopefully that toast will go away. Goodbye toast. Okay, just get rid of it myself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, instead of the Intel 10, I'm going to deploy to the real Samsung Nexus. And I'm going to try this again, so debug start new. It's going to package the application. And what I'm going to do is, yesterday I think I talked briefly about ADB, and I think I could actually have used ADB to set the emulator's properties. But what I'm going to do instead today is I'm going to come back out of Platform Tools, and I'm going to instead go to Tools, And in there's a program called Monitor. It used to be called DDMS. And if you run Monitor, what you get is you get like a debug UI. And among the things you can do on the debug UI, so you can see here's my debug UI, and you can see I get all sorts of trace coming through about my Google Mail, which I better hopefully won't show you anything. But you also get this kind of nice way of selecting it. So that's the Intel emulator, and here's the Samsung Nexus, and you can see the app that's running. And what I'm going to do is, you can see these buttons at the top here. Among them is a hierarchy viewer, and also is the screen capture. Let's just pick the hierarchy viewer. And what it does is it takes a screen snapshot, and hopefully on that screen snapshot you will see that we have our location. So that's the app we just wrote. Sorry, it's not the best resolution for you. This is the app we just wrote, and you can see it's got the Lat and Lng, and that is where I live, so you can come and see me if you can look those locations up. One thing you won't have seen is that as it started up, it actually stayed on 0 and 0 for a couple of seconds while it got the GPS location. But there is the the text views that we set up, and there are the values. So not the best demo perhaps because of emulator issues, but there it is running a location plugin on our first platform. Right, so that's that one done. Let me add another platform. Next in line is going to be iOS. Gosh, we're going for these guys first. Again, I'm just going to stick with iPhone to start with. And with iOS, what I want to do is I want to call it location.touch. And so I'll run it up. And again, I'm not talking through the details, but this time I will remember to add a reference to the core as the very first thing I do. And then I'll do the NuGet stuff. So Mvvmcross, and we should be able to install that guy and then install the location. Yeah, so the plugin, this location needs to go in both the core PCL and it goes in the UI projects as well. So once we've added in the plugin, what we should be able to do is there's just one additional step, which is to copy this guy on top of the existing app delegate. And then we need to set up some UI. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to this view, this first view, and where we've got a label and a text field at the moment, I'm going to replace that with a label and a label 2. And what label and label 2 are going to bind to is to Lat and Lng on the ViewModel. And obviously you might want to bind to other things like all sorts of exciting, you might want to bind to errors and status and when last updated and all that sort of thing. Right, so with that done, I then can hopefully actually build this guy. So I set it as the startup project. Set as startup. Set iPhone simulator. Hopefully it will tell me that I can use the Retina iPhone. And then let's actually deploy this. So what I'm going to do is debug start new, and while that's doing that, I'm going to zoom over to type VNC, connect to my Mac, type in the password, come up with the UI. Oh, it's a race against the simulator. Will type VNC come up before? And when I get into here, I then need to type in another password to get into there, and I may just be in time to see. Okay, so when this app launches up, you can see there's a 0 and 0 hopefully. Yeah, and you can see also that the app is asking me for permission. Can you use the current location? I'm going to hit OK, and then what you'll see is you get this location up, and that location is actually somewhere in Cupertino so it's Apple's HQ basically, and I don't believe there's any way of actually changing that from the code, unfortunately. So the only way to actually get the real location would be to deploy to a real phone. But there you can see we've got Lat and Lng, so that's the second part of my demo done. Right, 2 more platforms to go. As I said, it's going to be a really lightning quick N+1 today. So the next one is Windows Phone. And Windows Phone is wonderful for location. So let's do it. Location.phone. and we're going to target 7 so I can run the Droid and the Windows Phone emulator at the same time. And we're going to hook up properties, so we go to debug and we're just going to make sure we run the 7 emulator rather than the 8. And then we're going to add the references we need. So we're going to add a reference to the core project, location.core, and then we'll add these NuGet packages. So again, we search for Mvvmcross, and we install the core, which is the Hot Tuner starter pack, and we also install the location. And once we've done that, all we need to do is actually update our views. So with first view, at the moment we've got this display, and let's give it a page title as well to prove it's live, location. And then what we need to do is to actually set 2 locations. So let's do it using 2 text box. And the first one is going to show lat, and the second one is going to show long. And let's just set the font size on both of these. Font size equals 40. Font size equals 40. And then I think we also again have some properties to set. So if we find somewhere in here, we've got a WM app manifest. Now how do I do this in Windows Phone? I have to remember. It looks like if I double click the app manifest, then in here, you'll see, so all I've done is in, just to show you, in location.phone, in the properties, there's a WM manifest file. And I've double clicked on that and it's brought up this screen. And in here in capabilities, you can see there's all sorts of capabilities. Now by default, they're all selected. The important one here is this ID cap location one. And just make sure that that one is approved, because that's the one that will give you permissions. So with that done, let's run this up in the simulator. Here is my Windows Phone simulator, including kill.client and multipage.phone. Let's see what comes up. So it runs that. Okay, so I've forgotten a couple of steps in startup. So again, I'd have to go to, so at the moment it's running main page. We don't want it to run main page, we want it to run Mvvmcross. So there's a couple of steps. You have to do this setup in our app.xaml.cs. So I'm just adding them in. And then you have to change application launching. This block of code, and then with that done, hopefully we should actually be able to run. So let's do it. Start new, over to our emulator, and this time we get location, and there is our location. And with the Windows Phone emulator, there's this chevron you can click to get this additional thing. And what you can do is, instead of being where that location is, you can tell it to move a bit more across in the lat direction. So here we go. Hopefully you see it updating. Or if you really want to, you could zoom out a long way, and you could move to New York or something. Hopefully you see the location change when I do it. Or you can come and join me in London. Oh, Portugal sounds nice. Yeah, let's go to Portugal or Spain. Or really my dreams are to be in the Dolomites in Italy, and then I'll be much happier. So that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the Dolomites. Cool. I hope that gives you Windows Phone. It didn't take too long, and shows you just that's how you use a plugin. So let's do the final of these, which is going to be Windows Store. And so we load up Windows Store, and what we'd like to do is we'd like to call it location.store. Wait for the UI to update in Visual Studio. Let's get rid of main page, so we can't possibly go around that same problem as we did with phone. Let's add a reference to our core. Let us add a NuGet package. Oops, I don't need to do that. I will go to the online ones. And again, so there are 2 NuGet packages, because we're using the core framework, and we're adding in the location plugin. So we've done that, and you can see that's now fine and dandy and done. There are some to-do steps, and the to-do steps really is just to do that same sort of setup start. I'm going to do it in app.xaml.cs. So I find this block where previously the app was saying please start with main page, and what I'm doing is just replacing it with please start with Mvvmcross. And then we're actually onto UI. So we go to first view, and this UI is pretty ugly. Hopefully it's going to come up. Okay, it says you can continue working while the designer is loading, and I intend to. So what we can do here is we've got these two text blocks, text box and text block, and what I'm going to do is just replace it with lat and long and then give it a big old size. So here's lat, here's long, and then font size equals, and I'll make it quite big again, 60, and I'll just do the same thing with the next line. So that's the UI done. Obviously it's not the most exciting UI. I believe I may also have to just take a look at this. So you can see there's a package app manifest, and I'm going to double click that, and again I'm expecting that in here in this UI they bring up for this XML file there's a capabilities, and if you notice here, just as there was with Windows Phone and just as there was with Android, there's a thing here saying please allow me to use location. So I click that, and then once I've done that I should be able to deploy this baby. So let's do it, start new, up it runs, and right, so when this runs, as well as having that app manifest, you can see that the Windows 8 UI has asked me, can I have location, can location.store use your location? Whoops, I may have just broken it. And if I hit allow, then what you'll see is it updates, and that location is of course my real location here in sunny Twickenham today. So that's it. That was the N+1 for location. I don't know how long that took, but it didn't feel like very long. So the steps I went through is to create a PCL, add in NuGet for the location plugin, which just brought in a PCL DLL with kind of some interfaces in it. I then altered first ViewModel with this code that you can see, which is basically that it consumes a geolocation watcher. I then got, two properties, lat and long, and I just made sure that they were called from the callbacks for these guys. And then, having done that, I just whizzed through adding the UIs, and in each case I just added the core packages and I added the location plugin, and then I just quickly put a UI in place. I did have problems with running location on emulators. That's not particularly unusual. And I didn't do any of the error checking that you'd really want to do, and the handling for the situation where the user says no, you're not having location, or where the user tries to use it while you're in flight mode, or any of those sorts of things. But they should all be pretty similar across all the platforms. Okay, that is the end of this N+1, N=8 for location. I hope it was good, and I hope that kind of, hope it didn't go too fast, but I want to get you into that habit of, you can just write these things really quickly. Cool. Next up for N+1, I think I'm on the verge of starting a big SQLite one, which will be spanning across several. So yeah, I'm toying with the idea of doing some kind of beer database or wine database, without hopefully ruining the ideas of others like Git and Greg, who've already got some really good beer and wine database apps. So maybe it'll be a food review or something. If you've got any requests, please bing them in, and if you'd like me to go faster or slower, please also let me know. Otherwise, have a really good day. It's nice and sunny here. I hope it's good where you are.